Testing. 1, 2, 3. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want to know? Who my client list is?
Yeah.
Well, when I started out, it was actually a long, long time ago, because I don't know if you know, but I'm also immortal. Super Mythman is immortal. I've been living since the dawn of time. Some of my early clients were actually, believe it or not, chimps. You wouldn't think a monkey needed to lie. But the smart monkeys learned early on that if you lie, and that's what a myth is, you convince some guy, of some reality. While he's not looking, you could steal his food, and you could even knock him on the head with a stick if he wasn't watching, and you could beat one of the alpha chimps that you couldn't really beat normally, but you trick him.
And he'll pay you for protection.
Yeah, and you blame it on another monkey. You hit him on the head, and then you say another monkey did it. He goes after that monkey who's competition to you, and this is how you win the game. So I started out, like I said, I'm an immortal. I've been working a long time, so I started working out with the chimps, and then they recommended to me to the cavemen. So then I was working for the cavemen, and it was really good. I'd never worked for the Neanderthals because I hate losers. The Neanderthals were really nice. They were kind. They lived in caves. And when we came, out of the South, we were tougher than them. We were smarter than them. And we kicked their ass. And we basically, I wouldn't call it genocide, but we killed all of them. Genocide's a word that I don't really like to use. And it's kind of like the Turkish, and I don't want to insult Turkish people because I know there was no Armenian genocide. This idea that the Turks killed 1.5 million Armenians in a really nasty way in World War I, that's absolutely ridiculous. And if I was in Turkey and I was a Turk, I could be arrested for even making such a ludicrous comment. And now they're trying to get into the European community. And France is passing this law about how you have to admit when you've done genocide, and that's really difficult for the Turks because they're not even allowed to talk about it, much less admit it, and so it couldn't have happened. I mean, it's just like 6 million Jews. Do you believe that? I mean, 6 million Jews. They say the Nazis killed 6 million Jews. I mean, you talk to the neo-Nazis. Oh, thanks very much. This is the best I could get right here, with the beard and everything.
We're taking it back to the nut house.
So, all my neo-Nazi friends that have hired me to dispel, this notion, this mythology that, was created, and they even have photos and they have films and even documentation. They claim the Nazis did their own activities to solve the problem, the final solution, whoops. So Hitler had, his own film crew. Documenting the success of their activities, and then afterwards, some of this footage was discovered. So, this is really difficult for me as I'm trying to bust this myth. I've been hired by the neo-Nazis, and they want to dispel this myth that the Jews have basically created this myth. They use this footage that they got from Hitler as evidence that it actually happened. And they have a lot of documentation, and so it's making my life very difficult right now. That's actually one of my toughest clients right now, is these neo-Nazis and this whole neo-Nazi movement. But they've got a lot of money, and they paid me really well, so I have to produce. So I'm working to dispel this mythology and to convince people that this whole thing was an exaggeration and it never happened. Just like the Turkish government's offered me a job too, but I told them they didn't have enough money to pay for it because it's just it's just like a little too obvious. There's a little bit too much information, and too many people saw it. And I don't take jobs if I don't think I can win. I'm not going to take the job.
Is that a part of your myth?
Yeah, well, if I don't think I can win for the client, I'm not going to take the job. And I don't like to work with losers. I like to work with the winners because the winners got the money and they can pay the bill. You know, the losers almost never have any money. And I work for the money. It's not just for the fame and the women and all the other benefits, but I like to win and I have a reputation as a winner. And I don't hang out with losers.
Is that a myth? Part of your mythology?
Yeah, that's part of my personal mythology, and so everybody wants me, and they figure if I'm on their side, they can't lose because I never take a case that I never lose. So I take difficult cases like the neo-Nazis. That's a tough case. I almost turned them down, but if you go at it the right angle, write a couple of books, make some movies, make some slanderous accusations, and if you do it in the right circles and then people start to believe it, it can work. So I think I have a chance.
With the neo-Nazis?
With the neo-Nazis. But, I almost turned them down because it's like everybody knows, the Jews may be small in numbers, but they have a lot of power. They have a lot of clout, and they have a lot of money. So, these Nazis, I'm charging him triple the normal rate because I told him, I said,
you have a rate.
I have a rate, and it's a sliding scale. And the more difficult the job is, the more I charge. I don't know if you saw, there have been a couple of movies on my work. Actually, usually, the writers, they never name me directly, Super Myth Man, that's my calling card. But a lot of times, I don't know if you ever saw 2 movies that were all about me. One of them was The Wizard of Oz, and like I said, I've been working a long time. That was one of my first movies, and I loved that movie, but I was really upset. I orchestrated the whole magic for The Wizard of Oz. I established his reputation, and then one day when I wasn't looking, I wasn't on the set that day. I was on vacation, and there was this little dog. It was Dorothy's dog. And it pulled back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz and exposed him, and the whole sham about the all-powerful Wizard of Oz. And so this really, it almost ruined the whole movie, and it almost ruined my reputation. So I recovered because, like I said, it wasn't really my fault. It was that little son of a bitch, the dog I'm talking about, and so like now, whenever I work, I insist no dogs on the set. Wherever, if I do a movie, then no dogs, or they have to be on a leash, and they have to be a guy watching them all the time, because if they get out of control and expose me like that again, I'll be ruined. So, the other movie I did recently, to speak about the dog, it was called Wag the Dog, and it was about the work that I do, basically for political candidates, people. Like in the United States, if you're in trouble politically, if you could have a conflict. Remember Bill Clinton when things weren't going so well for him, and he had these issues like I didn't have sex with that girl, and he was talking about oral sex, and in his book that doesn't qualify as real sex, and so he was in the middle of an impeachment hearing, and there was trouble in Somalia, and he bombed a few factories. And every time you bomb anything and you do any kind of military conflict, it's good for your ratings as a president. So whenever you're in president, I advise presidents too. Some of my best clients are presidents. So I don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans. I work for anybody who pays cash, and I take cash off the books. So I never pay any taxes on this, and you'll never see an IRS record for me. You'll have to put it under a different category. So, anyway, there was I worked for him, and then there was the same thing. Even George Bush, I worked for him. Both the younger and the older, and they had a serious problem. George Bush Sr. Had this problem where it was the Russians don't want to be our enemies anymore, and they were wonderful for the military-industrial complex in the United States. They were worth $1 trillion a year. Just getting ready for that war that we never had, was worth a lot of money. It generated a lot of business. So military industrial complex is one of my major clients. We work for them a lot, and our main job is to convince everybody that the enemy is real. They're really out to get you. They hate your guts. They're jealous of you. They want to take what you have. They want to rape your women. They want to take away your freedoms, your pickup truck, and your Bible. And so they're going to take away all your freedoms, and they're really vicious. And so we used to do that very well with the Russians, but after the Russians don't want to be our enemies, and most of the Russians, I mean, I like to sound like a racist, but most of them are like white people. They look like us. Like those of us who are in the power structure, the traditional white men. I mean, if you look over there, aside from that poet Pushkin and a couple of others, and the Azerbaijanis and some of the Chinese in the area, but most of them, the really powerful ones, they call them the White Russians. And and they look like us. I mean, you can hardly tell the difference. So, like, it's hard to convince people that their enemy is somebody who looks like them. It's much better when the enemy doesn't look like them. And that's a much easier job. And, like, I worked for the Pentagon during the Vietnam War. Who do you think came up with the term gooks? We talk about the gooks who were out to get us and steal and, take away the American way of life. That was my invention. I coined the term gooks. And I vilified the South Vietnamese, and I even, that Bay of Pigs, the Gulf of Tonkin, I actually invented that whole thing. That was my idea to start the war, and it never actually happened, but the media never knew that. So that's my specialty, is like manipulating media. They're tools for me. And so, I have a big skill set. I don't like to boast about what I do, but I'm very talented at what I do, and I've been doing it for a long time. And like I said, I work for anybody who pays cash and I don't think is a loser, because I'm not going to take a losing client. I never lose a case. So,
what do you mean you know where he's
Well,
from?
you know where he's coming from. Like, you can't trust, say, do-gooders. Like people who are do-gooders, they're always doing things for the right reason. They're doing things for moral reasons. They're doing it for God and country. They're Boy Scouts. People like Jimmy Carter. He's a classic example of a Boy Scout. I mean, the guy, he wouldn't break the embargo. When we had an embargo against Iran, you couldn't sell them arms. He wouldn't break that embargo because it was put on there by Congress. There was also an embargo against the Sandinista rebels who were fighting the civil or trying to start a civil war in Nicaragua and destabilize the country of Nicaragua. And there was an embargo that Congress put on them because it was so embarrassing. They were shooting unarmed people in the coffee fields, blowing up clinics and bridges. And it was a real embarrassment to the United States internationally because we were funding them. Ronald Reagan was. And so the U.S. Congress put an embargo and was stopping the president from doing what he wanted to do, which is to fund these terrorists to work for us. And so this was, when you're dealing with people who are about winning, you're dealing with, like George Bush. He was always a guy who played to win. It wasn't about, he played to win and he did whatever it takes. Those are the people I like as clients because they do whatever is necessary. But the do-gooders, they always have their conscience is always bothering them. You try to work with them, they hire you, they want to, they think you're a PR consultant and they're calling the shots. And I tell them what to do, and if it's immoral or it's a low blow, they don't want to do it. And I don't want to deal with clients who won't listen to me. When I work for a client, I want some respect. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do it, and I don't want some Boy Scout telling me that my idea is lousy. Like, for example, when we wanted to start a war with the Cubans, with Fidel, we invaded in the Bay of Pig, whatever, but things didn't work out. It was a disaster. It was really embarrassing. The CIA misinformed the president. Anyway, they had this other idea, and it was my idea, I convinced the Joint Chiefs of Staff to pitch this idea to JFK. And the guy, he had the same kind of problem. He wanted to do the moral thing. Now this was a great idea. I wanted him to get, it was called Operation Northwoods. I wanted him to get planes, hijacked planes full of students, college students, and run them into tall buildings in Miami. And it would kill all the students, it would destroy the buildings, it would be an act of war. And we blame it on, make it look, circumstantial evidence, we make it look like the Cubans, like Castro did this. Then we have a perfect reason to go to a full, all-out war, not just like a bunch of little, Cubans attacking in the Bay of Pigs, but we could go to war big time. We could wipe them out in a short time. We could have solved the whole problem. But the JFK, he had all this Christian crap. I can't believe, this morality gets in the way of intelligent decision making. And I can't deal with these people. They're unreliable clients. You don't know. They don't take your advice. They don't respect your advice. They turned down the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and it was a unanimous decision on the part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in favor of my proposal. And John F. Kennedy turned this down. That's just the kind of guy he was. I couldn't work for him. I quit after that.
And went to work for Fidel, right?
Well, Fidel was much better. I mean, the guy didn't have as many scruples. He didn't have to deal with the Christian thing. This Christianity, it's like people who are religious, they have all of these, like, God is watching me, I can't do that, love your neighbor as yourself, love God with all your heart. How can you deal with clients like that? It just makes the job impossible. I can't stand it. If I feel a client is like too religious, unless some religious people, they talk a talk, but they're not really walking the walk. I can deal with them. Some of the holy rollers, they're selling the gospel of prosperity. They got big followers. They're making millions of dollars. Those people I love, and I can deal with them. They say they love Jesus, but they love me and they love money better. And those people I love and I can work for, and I do work for them. I have some really nice clients in the religious community. And I'm interdenominational. I don't care what the religion is as long as they pay cash. I work for Christians, Muslims, every kind of religion, even the occasional Buddhist. I know everybody thinks the Buddhists, Eightfold Path, they never do anything wrong. But I work for, not the Dalai Lama, the current one, because he was too young, but I worked for his predecessor, and they had torture chambers down in the big monasteries for the people who didn't go along with the show, the theological dogmas in Buddhism. Those Buddhists, when they came to power and they went east. They actually passed through Tibet, and there was another religion there called Bon, and it actually was a good religion, and it was actually very much like Buddhism, but they were the latest greatest when they came in, and they didn't need the competition with this old religion, and so they had to take some strong arm tactics and use actual physical force to make their point and take control of the show. And I worked with them. And I just need people who are practical and who have a mission and who want to win and who are willing to play by the rules I set without too many moral scruples. And, I help them out sometimes, because some of them, they can't sleep at night, they get disturbed, they get bothered, they didn't like what I did or what I suggested, they went along with it, but then they can't sleep. And those people, what I do is I actually custom make private mythologies to justify the bad things that we did to other people, and so that they can sleep at night. It's like a sleeping pill. And so the idea that the people that you abused deserved it, that they were going to do it to you, that if you hadn't done it to them first, they definitely were going to do it to you. and now they resent you because you did it to them first, but they would have done it to you if they had the chance. And now, because they resent you because you did it to them first. Every time you see them, you have to hit them and hit them hard, so they don't even think about it. So they wouldn't even try to get revenge. So that's the kind of thing. Once I convince people, and then I also convince them they're inferior, they're bad, they're immoral. And if you have a name like the Gooks, that was excellent. The Krauts, the Gooks, World War II. I actually worked for the Axis powers because the Germans, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was losing their money. They were going out of business. They were losers. And so when I had a chance to work for the Axis powers, I invented the word Krauts, and the whole making the Germans evil that I did in World War II. I did such a good job working for the Axis powers.
You got them wrong. It's the Allied powers.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
That's what happens when you become amoral. It doesn't matter. You get them mixed up.
It's been so long. It was so long ago. It was like what? That was like 80 years ago almost. And I have so many clients, Allied powers, Axis powers. They both begin with A, and I have a slight case of dyslexia too. So you got to forgive me. I'm almost perfect, but I'm not perfect.
Well, that's the mythology.
And I am immortal, that's for sure. You can't kill me.
And you are super myth man.
Yeah, and sometimes you remember that story about not the Gordian knot, but Medusa, and she had you looked at her face, she froze. That was actually, I worked for her. I used to work for the gods and goddesses of ancient Greece. And they had a serious problem because if people stop believing in you, you actually, as a god or a goddess, you can actually lose your powers. It's like taxation. People don't play you with their belief. Belief is a real tangible thing. If you go over to Macy's and you look, they have a belief meter over there. And you can actually see the degree to which people believe. And if you, as a god or goddess in ancient Greece, were losing the war to a Jewish carpenter, or even a Roman god, or being supplanted by one of the, they had this god Ra that Akhenaten was selling as the first, just one god, and he was threatening the livelihood of all of the gods of the ancient world. And that's why I actually worked for the gods and goddesses. I never worked for Akhenaten because I didn't like him. He didn't like wars. He was very peaceful. He was pro women's rights, and he was a real wimp, a loser. So I worked against him, and I worked with the temple gods and goddesses, and he didn't last very long. And then we got back to the old reign of the gods. But the belief is very important because when people stop believing in you, you actually lose your powers as a god or goddess. So I don't just work for money, but I work for the things that a god or a goddess can do for you. Because they have a lot of powers, you should never underestimate religious figures. Because they can do a lot of things. Some of them are intangible, but they can do a lot of things for you and bring you good luck and status and all kinds of other good things. You look at the priestly crowd, and I'm not talking about, just in the Old Testament, Pharisees and rabbis. I'm talking about the old, like ancient Greece, ancient Rome. The people who owned the temples always made the money, and they took the taxes in the form of God needs this, God needs that, pay him a tithe. The Hindus, all these people, even the Buddha, the statue, the gold gilded statues of the Buddha, all of these religions, they're excellent clients. I've worked for them all, and I'm not a discriminator. Like I said, I work for money, for power, status, and intangibles, just for the hell of it sometimes.
So maybe you could explain the mythology story behind the golden calf.
Oh, the golden calf? Well, actually, I never liked Judaism. I mean, I don't want to pick sides, but I hated them almost as much as I hated Akhenaten. Because this whole idea about one God is putting all the other gods out of business. and so like there was a big cult of Ashtar and the golden calf and in Babylonia and that whole region, and she was doing business with me. She was a good client. I liked her, and then these Israelites come out of the desert, and they got this Moses guy, and they're working, and this one God, and he's threatening the entire region. The whole God and Goddess way of life. This whole idea about one God is just like, I don't want to have a client, just one client. And I don't want to say that I won't work for anybody, but I won't. I do have standards, and a lot of times I've never worked for that guy. They call him the nameless one. The one who cannot be named, the one who, when Moses said, "What's your name?" He said, "My name is He who is, who was, and who shall be." The verb tense from to be, and Yahweh. And I've never worked for him. I don't trust him because, I don't trust somebody I can't see. And a burning bush. Like I've always dealt with the other gods and goddesses face-to-face meetings, Mount Olympus. I go wherever I have to. But this burning bush character, single God, trying to put everybody else out of business, I have never really felt comfortable with him. And even though, the Roman Catholic Church, some of the church figures, the human people, I can deal with them because some of them are a lot more pragmatic. They're more practical. But some of them are so zealous. Like Martin Luther, forget about it. I would never work for him. He was such a hard-ass, such a purist. These Boy Scouts, I have a great deal of difficulty with. And some people who have this moral sense, they're superior, and they, lay down their lives, and they're really hard to deal with, and they also don't like my moral relativism and my pragmatic approach, because I'm just dealing with the problem. You want to manipulate people, you want them to do what you want them to do, and you want to make money doing it. So this is the problem I deal with all the time, and corporate clients, Madison Avenue, the big players, and believing in Christmas. You think it's easy to sell a fat man in a red suit? It's not. Like he goes and he delivers packages down chimneys all over the world in one night. How can you sell that? Realistically, people are not all idiots. After 5 years old, they start putting 2 to 2 together, and it's really hard to sell this. So you have to sell people on the idea that for some reason it's good to continue this story, and it's good for the kids, and it's good for the family, and it makes them enjoy Christmas. If you told them like this, the Jesus story, the Jesus story with the presents. They used to have presents. It was called the Three Kings, and the kids would get the presents 10 days after the birthday of Christ. But the birthday of Christ was all about Christ. It was all about Him. He was the gift. He was the gift that God gives to all people. He was the Christ child born in the hearts of every person, the divine spark. What kind of money can you make out of this? Selling toys, you can make a profit. But giving things away for free, you don't make any money on it. So it was really like a terrible idea. And that's why I've tried to phase out Jesus altogether. And I've been pretty successful. If you look around, there are people who complain and they say, "Where's Jesus?" But a lot of the people, they don't even notice that he's gone. He's not in the picture. It's just about Santa. It's about the elves. It's about the reindeer. And to the businessman, it's about the money. It's about the clients. And you're forcing people to buy. Black Friday is when they finally make a profit. They do something like, I believe it's 40% of gross national product of the United States, or at least the sales on the retail level. Christmas season is huge, and it's because of me. I was the one who developed the campaign. I was the one who phased out Jesus. I told him Jesus was no good. I mean, he's not good for business. What would Jesus buy? I mean, what would Jesus buy? The guy was poor. He didn't have any money. He didn't even have a house. He was like kind of homeless. He traveled around for like 3 years in Galilee with a bunch of fishermen, and you know, he was also like, he was troubled. Do you remember the temple steps? He was like fighting with the people on the temple steps, the money changers. He got angry. He was very like, had this sort of entitled sense, like my father's house, and you know, got very upset. I mean, what does that do for business on the temple steps? And you know, thank God, you know, it's like at least somebody there, like in the who had a political sense, realized he was dangerous. He could have incited a riot. He could have gotten the Israelis in big trouble, you know, because the Romans were always worried about a Messiah showing up. They were always talking about the Messiah. The Jews are still talking about the Messiah. And it's been years. And you know, they say occasionally, like, one is showing up. There's one living in Brooklyn. There's, you know, he's cited here and there. And then you have these different stories about who the guy is, when is he coming. Even the Christians, some of them were waiting now for Jesus to come back. And it gets very complicated, but there's not much money involved. And so, like, I just try to stay away from that whole field. You know, Christmas is something I can get my hands on. It's about sales quotas, and toys, and forcing people to buy what they can't afford, and getting them to move beyond their fears to make the sale. You got to close on the deal, and that's what I do. And I make them feel like they're not really valuable as people, that people are not really valuable, period. But if you dress them up, and you put them in the right clothes, in the right car, in the right neighborhood, with the right title, that maybe they'll be worthy of love. And you convince them they're not lovable, but if they buy the things you want, their kids will love them, their wife will love them, they'll be lovable, people will like them. And this is what I do. I work on Fifth Avenue, I have budgets, I have teams of people working for me. And I convince people that they stink, the natural smells, like how a person smells, is like, it smells bad. People smell bad. So you cover it up with cologne and perfume. And some of these perfumes make you more sexy. You'll get more girls. This is the kind of thing that I can do, and I've done it very successfully. I have a lot of clients, and I feel content. You know, I look back at Christmas time, and it's the time of year that gives me the most satisfaction, because I feel like I really did the job. You know, that kind of personal satisfaction, there's nothing that beats it. You know, just, it's beyond the money. It's about personal satisfaction when you know you did a good job. And I'm not talking like a snow job. It's not just about the snow. That's just for effect. You know, sometimes on the sets we use snow, but it's not real snow. And so, you know, we use whatever tools we have to in order to create the effect we're looking for. And I take a lot of pride in my work. I don't know if you can tell by the way I talk, but I've been in the business a long time. I'm very proud of my work and of who I am, even though nobody really knows who I am or what I am. I'm almost as mysterious as God himself. You know, I was who I am, who was, who is, and shall be. Long live advertising. And myth-making. I mean, it's almost as old as mankind and as old as God himself. Yeah. So, I guess that's as much as I can say on this subject. I don't know if you have any other questions.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Talk to me about genocides.
Oh, genocide? It's a very useful tool. You know, if you want to get people out of the way in a hurry, genocide is a super tool. You know, of course, I'll deny this. I hope you're not recording this part of the conversation, because, you know, I like to maintain a nice guy image. And when you talk about genocide, a lot of people, like, really frown on you. They turn away. They feel disgusted. And so like even when I make these suggestions to people, it's a hard sell. I mean, like when I worked for Pol Pot, and the United States was actually funding Pol Pot because he was an anti-communist, and so we were funding this guy, and then he listened to me, and I told him he wanted to be an absolute ruler and control people absolutely, and I said, well, the first thing you got to do is get rid of all the intelligent people, because intelligent people are very dangerous. And so I recommended to him, and he listened to me. I said, kill everybody with glasses. I said, if they have glasses, they read. People who read are exposed to foreign ideas, and they think. This means they're dangerous. They could actually turn on you, and smart people, you never know what they're going to do. They're very smart. That's the definition of a dangerous person, somebody who's really smart. And those are the people you got to kill. So I convinced him. I said, listen, it's easy to do. All you have to do is you get kids, you put them on drugs, you give them guns, and you tell them to kill these people, and these are bad people, and they better do it or you're going to kill them. That almost always works. I've never seen a kid who will stand up to the other boys and get killed or tortured because he won't shoot somebody that you point at. So you round up all the people with glasses, and you don't ask questions. It's not about politics. It's not about religion. It's about glasses. And try to, be careful. Don't even tell them you're looking for people with glasses. You got to go in there and catch them when they're not alert. Don't let them know. Don't put it in the newspaper like we're coming after everybody with glasses. You got to sneak up on them, and you grab all the people with glasses, and you kill them all. And you can go out in the fields, just dig a hole, even make them dig their own hole. You don't put the kids to work; they just have to shoot. So you give them the gun, you put them on drugs, you give them some music, and I did the same thing with the Africans. Have you ever heard of this guy down in I think it's in Uganda. I got a little lost because no, this is not King Leopold. I work for him too. But I'm talking about the guy who does the Army of the Lord. The Army of the Lord and the Lord's Army, and I used the same strategy with him. I told him kids are great. It's not just that they work cheap and there are lots of them, but they're easy to control, much easier than grown-ups. And they take orders, and you just threaten them, and they give in. There's a whole. Have you ever read Lord of the Flies? I was a consultant to the guy who wrote that book because I know all about the behavior of kids. And he listened to me, and he put it in the book. And I was a little upset. A lot of times people never give me the credit. I work for these people. Do you ever see the credits? Like, they just don't even mention my name. They don't say consultant, super myth maker, super myth man worked on this project with me, was invaluable. You remember Lucas? Lucas came to me. And I turned him down because I don't like him. He's a loser in my book. And he went to Joseph Campbell. And you see, like, Joseph Campbell is not nearly as good as me. I mean, Joseph Campbell is just a guy who knows a lot of myths. He knows about a lot of myths. But he's not a myth maker like I am. He's just a student of mythology. And he was a consultant for George Lucas on Star Wars. And I will confess, as one professional to another, he did a pretty good job. But I could have done better. But I would never work for Lucas because in my book he's a loser because he's so into this like good versus evil, and he's so like good, and it just makes me sick. I want to puke. And so the good guys always win. It's such a Hollywood ending, because the truth is a lot of times the bad guys win, especially if they have me working on their side. I am very good at what I do. And if people, the problem with people, even Hitler, Stalin, I worked for both of those guys. And with the problem is they get successful, and then it goes to their head, and then they think they don't need you anymore, and they don't need to listen to you, and they're so great, they can do it their way. Hitler was that way. He was so successful, and then he got really cocky. He went in. I told him finish the British off first, and he didn't want to wait. He wanted to go. He turned against Stalin, who was one of my clients too, and he turned against Stalin and came out of the blue. And he was winning. He was going to destroy Stalin, and they couldn't recoup. Stalin did some really stupid things. He was an absolute idiot sometimes. A military strategy, didn't listen to his generals, and then Hitler got so cocky that he was so successful. He divided his army, and he split off the tanks at Leningrad. He split the tank force from the army, and this was the group that had gone west, that had gone into France, Poland, Europe. They had been the most successful of his group. It was his super army, and they were decimated. They were wiped out. It was the end of him, and it was because he got cocky, and he didn't listen to reason, and he didn't listen to me. And those are the kind of people I can't work with. He was a loser, and he deserved what happened to him in the end because he didn't listen to me.
Well, I'm listening to you.
Yeah, I'm glad. I like respect, and all my clients have given me respect. Like, I love King Leopold. You know what I did for him? He was like the last guy in to the colonial business. Belgium didn't have colonies. They weren't like the Spanish, the Portuguese, everybody else, even the Germans, the French. They all got colonies. South America, Africa, India, the Southeast Islands were all, and the Belgians had nothing. And so, I actually went to speak to King Leopold, and I said to him, listen, I said, you're being totally left out. You're going to be the poorest country in Europe because you have no colonies. How are you going to make this ridiculous money you can make in a colony? And you better hurry. So I convinced him to go for the Congo, and he said, what's in the Congo, And in those days, one of the big business was rubber. And there were no artificial rubber. You needed real rubber from trees to make tires for cars. And this was just in the beginning. So I said, listen, you can make a fortune in rubber. All you got to do is go in there and you divide the tribes. You take the minority tribe, the Tutsis, you put them in charge of the Hutus, and you give the Tutsis the guns, and but you have to be strict with them. Tell them you can't waste bullets. That was my idea. I said, make them show you that they spent a bullet wisely and they didn't waste anything. So for every bullet that you give one of the Tutsis, you have to make them bring back from the elbow down the hand of the person they killed. This way, you know that they're not wasting the bullets and they're serious about the business you put them in charge of. Because so that's what they did. And sometimes I saw them cheating. They miss sometimes when they shoot, and they would cut off the arms of people who were still alive, and they would do that because they needed the arm, but it wasn't true. And they would even line up people 5 in a row and then shoot, with heads all together, and they'd shoot right through one guy's head all the way through the others. So they'd kill 5 people with one bullet. That's cheating. The master told them, but as long as you counted, and it seemed to be effective because they were getting a lot of rubber. They got some excellent production. They turned the whole Congo into a slave state. It was like a gigantic slave prison, and it was working extremely well. And they did a lot of money in rubber. And then when the rubber started to go bad, they went into chocolate. They call it black gold, and they made a fortune in black gold in chocolate. So, the only problem with King Leopold is, again, once he got a lot of money, it went to his head, he fired me. He thought he didn't need to pay me anymore, that I was, too expensive. That's just getting greedy. And so when he fired me, you know what happened to him? I left him on his own. And he ended up getting totally exposed. He was the first international pariah. He was so hated, even in his lifetime, and fully exposed in what he did and how terrible it was, that when he died, he didn't even want the funeral procession to go in the streets of the capital because he didn't want to be booed in his death. And so it was actually one Irishman screwed him up who worked on the boats, and he kept the records. It was really terrible what happened to him, but he deserved it. He didn't listen to me.
Who else didn't listen to you?
Well, let's see. Some of my actually, you know what? That Milosevic, I worked for him, and I told him, I said, listen, if you want to be Tito's gone, and the whole place is going to break up, and you're going to lose a lot of valuable real estate because they got this Muslim group, and the Serbians are not Muslims. And normally, one of the excellent ways to work is not just it's divide and conquer, and so you just have to vilify a particular group. And the problem is, like, they look the same. They're all white people, right? So like they look just like the Muslims look just like the Christians. And if you put them up in a lineup and ask an average guy which one is a Muslim, which one's a Christian, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And so they were actually for a long time they had been living successfully together. And they even had the Winter Games in Sarajevo, and everybody said, "Oh wow, this place is so cool. Bosnia is so nice. Everybody gets along." And you would think, So I told him, I said, "Listen, what you need to do is you need to divide and conquer. And you have more people, you have more guns. They're a minority group. You can wipe them out. You just have to play hardball. You can't I hate to use the word genocide, but it's that kind of game. If you want to play to win, sometimes you have to do what it takes." And I liked him because he listened to me. He gave me some respect, and he did what I told him. And the genocide thing worked out really well, but then the Americans and the Allied forces and the press is terrible. When you do these things, you have to do them quietly, and you have to create, like Hitler listened to me, when he was setting up the camps and he was killing the Jews, he was really smart, because what he did is he set up these PR camps where he had the women playing and the women with the kids, and they videotaped them and they filmed them, and they showed this to the other Jews, and they said, "You're just being relocated to another area, to a nice place somewhere else." But it wasn't true, and it was this is called manipulation, and this is what I teach people. And I teach them how to do it. And Hitler was a great student, and it was one of the personal disappointments of my life. Admittedly, I'm immortal, but to have a student like that he was so smart. He was like a quick study, and he had a whole flair. He knew how to dress, he knew how to act, he knew how to talk. He was one of the most melodramatic, creative people I've ever worked with. And if he had just listened to me and hadn't gone, the power, he was so successful that, it's like Icarus and flying too close to the sun. He was that kind of guy. If he had just been a little more modest, listen to me. I told him, don't be overconfident. It was his overconfidence that killed him. But he did a beautiful job in terms of how they set up those camps and how they got rid of those people. It was like they do everything so well. I mean, there's a reason the Germans were going to conquer the world, because they organize everything, and it's done like a business. It's done with engineering and science, and they set up ovens and train tracks and efficiency, and they had PR going all this time, and they covered the whole thing up so well. Even after the war, a lot of Germans had plausible deniability. They didn't believe it was possible, that he would actually go ahead and do this kind of thing, which he did. And even the Jews who were being killed by the millions, they didn't believe it was possible either. And they just thought it was technically too difficult. It couldn't be done. It was too crazy. It was too insane. It could never happen. And that's why it worked so well. And it's about the disguise, about the cover-up. And that's what that's what I teach. And he was one of my best students. And I was very proud of him until he got cocky. And I just can't stand people who don't listen to me. You know what I mean?
I listen to you all the time.
I know, that's what I like about you. If you ever stop listening to me, you better watch your back.
I would never stop listening to you.
Yeah. So.
And what about in Latin America and with the slaves? What was that about?
Oh well, that was actually easy. I talked to the Pope. The Pope was in charge in 1495, and I liked the popes. Jesus and a lot of Christians I have problems with, but the popes, a lot of the popes, we got along very well, and they understood power. They did what was needed, and they were pragmatic. And so you go into the New World. There are all these people living there, and in order to make things work for the church and to get a lot of money, you got to control these people. And it's their land, and they've been living there for hundreds, thousands of years. So of course there's going to be resistance. It's normal. So I said to him, the only way you can do this is you got to be brutal. And you just brutal, like the Spanish Inquisition, like the witch hunts in Europe, that kind of brutality. And you have to set up mythology. You have to have, when I was involved, I was a consultant on the witch hunts, and they had a Bible. It was called the Hammer, and it was like how to tell if somebody's a witch or not. And you stick them with needles all over their body until you find a spot where it doesn't hurt, and then you know that they're a witch, because that's a sign that you're a witch when you stick them with a needle and it doesn't hurt. Now, of course, I know about acupuncture. I've been in China. I know all about that, so I knew there was bound to be a spot somewhere, if you found it by accident, where it's not going to hurt with the needle. But I put it into the book because I knew if you stuck a person all over their body, eventually you're going to find an acupuncture spot where it's not going to hurt, and that's proof that they're witches. So this is the mythology that I created. I sold it, and we killed a lot of innocent people as witches. But if you want the world to work, you have to be willing to get over the fact that sometimes you have to kill people, because things are not going to go your way if everybody's not going to agree with you, and you just have to learn. Kill them. That's the best solution. You have to be a little ruthless. I mean, this is called the law of survival. I mean, it's a scientific fact, and that's another mythology. They talk about evolution and Darwinian evolution, and Darwinism became another kind of religion. It's the religion of science and the mythology of science and empirical data and the scientific way. And so, a lot of times I convince my clients who are a little squeamish. Some of them are religious, and they're just uncomfortable. Even some of the humanists, they don't believe in God, but they believe in treating your fellow human decently. Like these people, they have as much problem as any of the religious people in doing the things I suggest. So I talk to them about scientific language, because a lot of them, they respect learning and knowledge and science. So I talk to them about Darwinianism and the rule of law and the survival. And if you want to be a survivor, I mean, if you want to be here for the long term, you want to stick around, you have to do what it takes. You have to recognize that it's the power of the strong against the weak, and the guy with a better gun wins, better armor wins. So you have to use what you've got and use it ruthlessly, and that's the only way you're going to survive. And so this is for your family, for your nation, for your loved ones. You have to be ruthless. So I convinced them. I said, look, none of those people have ever heard of Jesus in Brazil. in South America, all those indigenous people, those Indians, you can say they don't have a soul, and you can tell people, and that's what the Pope did. He created a papal bull. That's an infallible statement, and he said these people don't have a soul, and it's okay to treat them any way you want. Turn them into slaves, do whatever you want to them, treat them like cattle, and it's totally okay, and you won't be punished by God for it. And so that's what the Pope did, and this was he did what I told him, and it worked. And they were able to subjugate, brutalize, and control millions of people, and killed them whenever they gave them trouble. Anybody who gave them trouble, they just killed them. You know, all the tough ones, anybody who wouldn't listen, just kill them. And they were able to take over, and they got very rich doing it. And they built beautiful houses and museums and cultural centers, and so it really worked out for them. So. Anyway, I don't know. I've been talking a lot, and I've covered a lot of ground in terms of history, and I think you've heard of osmosis. You can only absorb so much at one particular time, and I think I don't want to oversaturate the ground, and I think I've given you enough to think about, and you now know enough about me to give me the respect I deserve. And that's all I'm looking for, is your adulation and your respect. And, if you know any clients and they have a lot of money and they're not losers, call me if they need something. You want to start a war and you need a provocation, you need a reason. I'm excellent at that kind of thing. You remember the Alamo? That was me. You remember the Spanish-American War? There was a boat blew up in the harbor of Havana, killed 33 soldiers. There's if you go to the park right over here in New York City, you'll see a monument to the soldiers, the sailors on the Maine who were killed. And that was actually I actually talked to the president, and I told him, do what's necessary, and I said, blow up your own boat. And that's all. You need a reason to go to war. You can't just go to war. It's a civilized country, etc., etc. And these people listened to me, and that's how they got the war started. And that's how we got the Philippines. We got Puerto Rico. Even in the Philippines, I told him, don't be squeamish. I said, the freedom fighters who fought against the Spanish for their independence, and we helped them. As soon as we beat the Spanish, we turned on the people we had armed and trained, and we killed them. And we wiped them out, and we fought against them until we subjugated them, and we controlled the Philippines, and we put our military bases there, and we extended our manifest destiny into the Pacific Hemisphere. I said, that was all my ideas. I'm full of ideas, and if there are intelligent people who want to get something done, come to me. But I'm not cheap, and I don't like losers and squeamish people.